Good morning, class. This is the homework for Tuesday, February 13th, multiplying fractions together. And when we multiply fractions, we want to multiply the top times the top and the bottom times the bottom, and then simplify if necessary. And that means get rid of any common factors. Okay? So for number 1, we have 2/5 times 3/7. We're going to multiply the top times the top, and that's 6, and the bottom times the bottom, and that's 35. And it's going to be very handy to have your multiplication chart here if you need it. You want to be careful of your signs, and we usually put the negative sign up on the top. So this is going to be -1 times 5. So that's -1 times 5 over 6 times 3. Top times the top, bottom times the bottom. So -1 times 5 is -5, and 6 times 3 is 18. It doesn't really matter where you put the negative as long as you have one. Number 5, let's see, number 6, we have 2 negatives being multiplied together. So that's going to be, I'm going to put it to the top, -7 times -2. That's -7 times -2. That's going to be 14. And then the bottom is 3 times 3, and that's 9. Circle my answers. Okay, top times the top, bottom times the bottom. Now there's going to be times when you can either, you have to simplify it when you're done, or you could cancel beforehand. So I'm going to show you both ways. So with number 5, I have a 5 on the bottom here and a 5 on the top here, and we're multiplying. Well, I can cancel these, and they just become a 1 and a 1. So then what happens is when I multiply, I have -2 times 1, that's -2. And 1 times 6 is 6. Remember, I put the negative on the top. So you can do the same thing with number 6. Number 7, I have a 3 and a 6 here. I know that 3 goes into 6, so I can cancel. So 3 goes into 3 one time, and 3 goes into 6 2 times. So I just sort of cancel out the common factor of 3. I know 3 goes into 3, that's one time, and 3 goes into 6 2 times. So now when I multiply, I just multiply -1 times 2, and I get -2, and 1 times 5 is 5. Now, if you didn't cancel, which is fine if you don't cancel, I would just multiply. So that was -1 times 6, so that's -6, and then 3 times 5 is 15. So I would get this answer right here if I didn't cancel. The only thing is I know there's a common factor of 3. I didn't cancel it in the beginning, so I'm going to need to cancel it now. I know that 3 goes into 6, and I know that 3 goes into 15. So this is -2, and this is 5. And look, it's the same answer. So you can simplify before you multiply or after you multiply. It's up to you. So there's some more of them down here. If I do number 9, I know that 5 goes into 10, so I could do some canceling of some common factors here. 5 divided by 5 is 1, and 10 divided by 5 is 2. So I just divided both by 5. And I get 1 times 1, which is 1, and then 2 times 4, which is 8. But if you didn't do that, you just multiplied, 1 times 5 is 5, and 10 times 4 is 40. And then I just going to simplify it now. I know that 5 and 40 have a common factor of 5, so I can divide by 5. And I get 5 divided by 5 is 1, and 40 divided by 5 is 8, and I get the same answer. So either way is fine. And watch your signs. We have a negative here and a positive here, so your final answer is going to be negative, right? We have a negative here and a negative here, so your final answer is going to be positive, right? All right, so then 13, 14, 15, 16, I'll do a couple of these to show you what to do here. Remember, when we're multiplying fractions, it's top times top, bottom times bottom. But here we have a 2. We have 3/5 times 2. Where's the top? Where's the bottom? Well, the 2 is the top. So you can rewrite it like this. Just put it over 1. 2 equals 2 over 1. They mean the same thing. So now I have a fraction here that I can multiply. 3 times 2 is 6. And 5 times 1 is 5. And so I have a top times a top and a bottom times a bottom. I'll do another one. We have -8 here. Now I can just put a 1 underneath it. So it's 2 times negative 8, that's negative 16. And then 3 times 1 is 3, and I'm done. Okay? When you get really good at it, you won't need to put the 1. You'll just know that the negative 8, or this whole number, just gets multiplied times the top. But for now, you can just put it over 1 and multiply. And there's nothing to simplify here. There's no common factors. So you go ahead and do 15 and 16. And I think there's going to be common factors in there, so you might have to simplify when you're done. Okay, 17, okay, 18, 19, and 20. You have to change these to improper fractions first. So remember, to change a mixed number into an improper fraction, you have to know how to do it, right? So I have to take the 3, I'm going to do this one. I have to take the 3 and multiply by the 2. So 3 times 2 is 6, and then you add it to the 1. So 3 times 2 is 6 plus 1 is 7, and I put that over 3. So that's 7 over 3, but there's a negative in front, so make sure you include the negative. So I just multiply 3 times 2 and got 6. 6 plus 1 is 7. And then I have my fraction written as an improper fraction with the negative sign. And I'm going to multiply that times 3 over 5. And then we multiply top times the top, bottom times the bottom. I notice that there's a common factor here, so I'm going to cross those out. And I have negative 7 over 5. And I'm done. Now, if you didn't want to cancel those out, you would have gotten negative 21 over 15. And that's fine, but you got to simplify it. 3 goes into 21 and 3 goes into 15. So you get negative 7 over 5. You get the same answer. Now I'll do number 20. 19 and 20 are a little tricky, so watch me do 20 and then you try 19. And I'm doing these and then you do the other ones, okay? I do one, you do one. I do one, you do one. So here I have negative 1/2 times 5. So I'm going to change this into a improper fraction. So that's 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 1 is 2. Then I add the 1, that's 3. So I get 3 over 2. But it's negative. So I just changed 1/2 to the improper fraction 3/2, and I make it negative. Now I'm going to multiply that by 5. But remember, 5 needs to be multiplied on the top, so I'm going to put it over 1. So now I have 5 over 1 for the 5, and I have negative 3/2 for the 1/2. Now I multiply top times the top, negative 15, bottom times the bottom, 2. And I'm done. We also reviewed how to use fractions with exponents. So we have 1/5 squared. That means everything in the parentheses has to get multiplied by itself. So 1/5 times 1/5, right? It's squared. So I take this and multiply it by itself 2 times. And then it's just top times the top and bottom times the bottom. Right? Top times the top, bottom times the bottom. And we get 1 over 25. Done. Notice on number 24 we have a 3 here. So that means you're going to take negative 1/3 and you're going to multiply it. Look, I'm leaving it in parentheses because it's got a negative in it. And I'm going to multiply it by itself 3 times. So that means I'm going to take negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1. That's 1. But I have a negative times a negative makes a positive, and a positive times a negative makes a negative. So we get negative 1 on the top, and then 3 times 3 times 3. 3 times 3 is 9. 9 times 3 is 27. Okay, so now you're going to try number 2 and that should be a 22. Number 22 and 23. Okay? I'm using the same method. It's good to put the negatives in parentheses like that. Okay? Okay, when we're multiplying fractions with variables, we just do the same thing. Top times the top, bottom times the bottom. So here we have 2 times x. So that's 2x. And then we have 5 times 5 on the bottom, so that's 25. So you can write this like this with the x on top, 2x, and 25. Or sometimes it's better if you write it with just the 2 over the 25, all times x. So either way, but you get used to writing them either way, okay? Because there's sometimes it's going to be nicer to have it like this, and sometimes it's going to be nicer to have it like this. Let's look at 7, we have 1/8 times x. Okay, so this is not a fraction, so we can make it a fraction. Just put it over 1. So we have 1 times x, that's x. And we have 8 times 1 on the bottom, and that's 8. So you have x over 8, and that's fine. Or sometimes you might want to write it like the x outside here, and then you take the imaginary 1. It's an imaginary 1 there, and put that over the 8. So I take out the x. So it's 1/8 times x. So either one of these, so I'm just going to rewrite that. X over 8, you can either write it like that, or you can write it as 1/8 over x. Okay, just like here, you take the top number and the bottom number and pull them out away from the x. So take the 2 and the 25 away from the x. And here we took the 1, the imaginary 1, and the 8 away from the x. So know how to do it both ways in practice number 26 and 28. Okay, on the next side is reviewing add and subtract. I'm just going to point out a few things. Remember, you need the same denominator. So if they're not the same, the denominators, you've got to make them the same, right? Same denominator is necessary, right? You need the same denominator. Here we have the same denominator, so you can add the numerators. You can find the answer. Here we have the same denominator, so you can subtract. Be careful. This is 2 minus 5. Be careful with your sign. And here we have the same denominator. So you're going to be able to do the numerators. Give these a try because these are going to have to be careful with the signs, okay? But 4 and 5 are not the same denominator, but you can make one look like the other. So make one look like the other. So I'm going to do one of these. So I can make the 3 look like the 6 here, or I can make the 7 look like the 14. So I'm going to go ahead and do this one. I can make the 3 look like the 6. How do I make the 3 look like the 6? I it by 2. But if you multiply the bottom by 2, you have to multiply the top by 2. So I can change this fraction 1/3. 1 times 2 is 2. 3 times 2 is 6. I've rewritten that, and now I can add that to 5, 6 because the denominators are same. That's necessary when you're adding and subtracting. And so then we just add the numerators, 2 plus 5, and that goes over 6. So that's 7 over 6. And if you didn't remember how to do these, use this example to help you. When the denominators are the same, you just add the numerators. So you're going to try this one. You can make that 7 look like a 14. And then number 6, you have to change both fractions. Change both denominators. Change both. Because you can't make a 5 look like a 4, and you can't make a 4 look like a 5. So you have to rewrite these so that they both have the same denominator. And if you look at your multiplication chart and you look at 5 and 4, what number does 5 go into and 4 go into? I look across here and I notice, oh look, they both go into 20. So I can use 20 as my common denominator. So 20 on the bottom. Now you're going to make 5 turn into 20 by multiplying it by 4. So you have to multiply top and bottom by 4. And you get 8 over 20. Now you do this one. Change this into 20. What do you multiply that by? Do it top and bottom. And then add them. So you finish that one. Okay, so the rest of these here are review. We're distributing. I'll do a couple of these, or a few of these. So when we distribute, we're multiplying. So I'm taking the number on the outside and multiplying it times every term on the inside. So this is 3 times x minus 6. 3 times x is 3x. And then 3 times negative 6 is minus 18. Remember the shortcut? You multiply positive times a negative, you get a negative. And I'm done. Number 9. I'm going to take a negative 2 and multiply it. So negative 2 times x is negative 2x. And negative 2 times 7 is negative 14. Negative times a positive. And I'm done. You don't want 2 signs in here. If you get 2 signs in here, make them 1 sign. If you get the plus minus, make it a minus. Okay, so this is your final answer. You're going to try that one. And number 11, we're multiplying negative 2 again. Negative 2 times 3x is negative 6x. Right? Negative 2 times 3 is negative 6, and we have an x there. Now we have a negative times a negative, so that's positive 14, and we're done there. And you're going to do number 12. And here you have to distribute again, but you have some things outside. So when I distribute, I'm going to multiply this right here. This is what's going to get distributed. Let me see if I have a highlighter. You can highlight that a little bit if you can see that. But this is the part we got to distribute first. So we're going to take the 2 and multiply it by the x. So that's 2x. And 2 times the negative 3, I think of it as a negative. It's a minus 3, or you could think of it as a negative 3. Positive times a negative is negative 6. But I also have this 5x on the outside. So 5x plus the 2x minus this. So I have 5x plus 2x. Now, like terms, 5x plus 2x, that's 7x. Then we have the minus 6, and we're done. I had to combine these two terms because they have the same letter, the same power. Okay? And you go ahead and do number 14, and that's the assignment for today.